This just happened tonight, July 7th, 2015, and I'm still freaking out. I'll try to explain this the best that I can without skipping important details. My mind is racing, so please bear with me. Today my fiance and I spent the day with the family members, 2 hours from home. We left their houses at about 9 p.m. They live pretty much in the middle of nowhere. The roads there don't connect and don't have much traffic, especially at night. We come to a large cornfield, no house in sight, but a man was standing on the side of the road, looking towards us in the cornfield. He wasn't wearing a shirt, had a dirty, bloody-looking rag tied on his upper arm, and was holding a gun. The speed limit on this road is 30 miles per hour, so we weren't driving very fast, and as we pass this guy, he starts chasing our car. We heard a loud pop noise and realized it was the gun, so my fiance floored it and tried to get out of there ASAP. About 5 minutes later, a truck comes up behind us. I got a little nervous but assumed I was being paranoid, but no. This truck starts riding our ass and turning the headlights on and low beams over and over. No matter how much we sped up, this truck sped up to keep riding our ass. There were plenty of times this truck could pass us legally, but didn't. This truck followed us for 30 minutes. As we were going on debating whether or not we should pull over, go home, or go to the police station, we make it to a small town, and the truck starts to back off a bit. Then once we hit another back road, he inched back up to us. Then all of a sudden, the truck's headlights turned off, but he kept following us. I looked away for less than a minute to get into my purse and get my phone, and I looked back and the truck was gone. Neither of us saw where the truck went, so we decided to drive to a 24-hour grocery store and wait for about an hour before heading home. I'm still shaking and panicking. I know I should probably go to the police, but all we have is a slight description of the man. We couldn't get the license plate number because it was too dark. I'm not even sure if he had it on the front. I'm also afraid that the cops won't believe a crazy story like this. My fiance is keeping his gun next to the bed tonight, and I have a knife, but I'm still freaked out. During the summer, my mom had to leave us and tend to my grandpa, who had cancer and lived over 300 miles away. It was just my dad, my 16-year-old brother, and I. And for all 3 of those months of summer vacation, my dad worked all day and my brother Dean went to summer school, which meant I was home alone for a good portion of the day. We lived in a fairly safe neighborhood and I knew to always keep the doors locked. One day I was preparing lunch, grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I was heating up the frying pan while I heard some scratching coming from the front door. I turned off the heat and inched closer to the front door. I slowly see the knob jiggle and turn slowly. Thankfully the top was locked, but I heard it being tampered with. I quietly run into the kitchen and grab my frying pan. I don't really know why. I crawled into our pantry and post a status on Facebook asking for someone to call the police and to send them to my address. I hear someone enter the room and walk around. They don't sound like they're doing anything except walking, but then the footsteps get louder and louder. The pantry door opens and I hit the person in the head with as much force as I can with a hot pan. This person, a random man in his 40s, gets knocked out. The police arrive a few minutes later after this happened. They called my dad and my brother to inform them of what's happened. The police offered to take me to the station because I refused to let them leave him. My brother agrees to meet me there. It turns out the guy had a knife in his pocket and duct tape in the other. The police searched his car, which was parked in front of the house. They found rope, trash bags, girls' clothes, another knife, and a single picture of me in their glove compartment. I could only guess what would have happened to me. I've had some crazy encounters when I moved out of my parents' house to the big city. This is the most bizarre thing that's ever happened to me. My ex used to live in a very bad neighborhood with lots of junkies and dealers. He lived in a house that was divided into 2 studios, which shared one front door. His house was number 23A1 and the other was 23A2. The other studio was occupied by a crack addict / prostitute who I will call Amy. One of her clients, an old crazy guy, stayed at her apartment for a couple of days. Amy threw him out, and that's when all hell broke loose. That old guy wanted his money back, and Amy refused to give it to him. Every night he would come to the house and scream and ring the bell for hours. Police would come and pick him up, but he would be back the next day. He tried to break her window by throwing rocks. Broke my ex's window instead. Tried to break through the door, and tried to break in and screamed and screamed and screamed. One night, my ex and I came home very drunk. As soon as we got in the apartment, crazy old guy arrived at the door and started screaming again. We had kind of gotten used to it by now and decided to ignore it. But suddenly he stopped, so my ex looked outside of the window and saw him talking to someone. He opened up the window and told that guy the old man was crazy, just to warn him. The other guy looked up, showed some kind of ID, and told my ex that he was a police officer. He said he wanted to help us and asked us if we could let him in. My ex opened the front door to let him in, and to our surprise, the policeman barged into the apartment. I was lying in bed without any clothes on, and the police officer started acting really strange. He wanted to know who I was, if I was living there, if I was planning to get pregnant, unmarried, and if my parents knew where I was. I told him I had my own apartment and that I was 21, so I didn't need my parents' permission for anything. He said that he didn't trust us and he was going to take me to the police station. Then he called me a slut and started pulling my arm to get me out of bed. I was very, very drunk, so until he started pulling my arm, I thought he was a very rude police officer. Thankfully, my ex was already very suspicious. He stopped him and asked him if he could show his ID again. The police officer took the piece of paper from his pocket, showed it real quick and tried to put it back, but my ex grabbed his hand and saw that it wasn't an ID, but a business card with a police logo on it. My ex asked him if he could wait outside so I could get dressed, and as soon as he closed the door, we called the police, who arrested him and the old guy, who was still screaming. We filed charges against both of them the next day. The old guy was back the next day, but the fake police guy never returned.